The Stapleton name is being scraped off the signs today, and that neighborhood doesn't even have a new name yet. They clearly are not messing around. The association that runs the neighborhood announced abruptly over the weekend that they are ditching that name after years of refusals to part with it, even after the links to the KKK became well known. They made the announcement yesterday. Signs change today, meeting Wednesday, start talking about new names. It'll be up to the association's community delegation to officially vote to remove the Stapleton name and to pick the new one. Stapleton, of course, is named like the airport that preceded it on that land for former Denver Mayor Benjamin Stapleton, who's a member of the KKK. He was elected during a time when that hate group held tremendous political power in our state. Our Steve Steger offers up an uncomfortable history lesson.
I was always amazed that the Stapleton airport would be named Stapleton after a member of the Klan, after a Klan mayor.
University of Utah history professor Bob Goldberg lived in Denver, literally writing the book on the Klan's influence here.
In my mind, the Colorado Klan was the second most powerful clavering or organization in the United States in the 1920s, only after Indiana.
Goldberg says the Colorado Klan gained its power mainly during the 1920s, when the Klan was as close as it ever would be to mainstream.
Was anti-African American. It was for white supremacy, but its larger proponents, its larger issues were in regard to Catholics, Jews, immigrants, and the issue of law and order. And based on that cafeteria of appeals, the Klan was able to attract many, many people.
As many as 35,000 people in Colorado were KKK members. He says half of them in Denver. Goldberg described this Klan as a hateful economic machine that provided stickers for Protestant-owned businesses, encouraging Klansmen to shop there. And in 1924, he described a powerful political machine that influenced the election of a governor, lieutenant governor, most statewide office holders, a U.S. senator, and most city leaders, regardless of party.
The Klan would vote in bloc for a candidate. As John Galen Locke, the Grand Dragon of the Colorado Klan, said, "We are not Republicans, we are not Democrats, we are Klansmen." And you were expected to vote the Klan ticket.
Photos from the Denver Public Library show how absurdly mainstream it was, from a huge meeting with a burning cross atop Table Mountain in Golden to a Klan day at the Overland Park racetrack. Eventually, political scandal would take the Klan's influence away by the mid-20s, though Goldberg says he believes some of that era still reverberates today.
And the echoes I hear today are very similar in regard to who is considered insiders and who are considered outsiders, who are considered Americans and whose Americanism is tainted.
And while the Klan gained a bit of political legitimacy there for that brief period in the 20s, scholars say it wasn't any less hateful at that period. And ironically, the Klan's leadership, who portrayed themselves as advocates for law and order, then proceeded to get involved in numerous public scandals, accused of breaking the law, and that is what led the KKK back into the shadows where they mostly remain today. Kyle.
Not hate, it was ethics. It was bad government that led to their downfall in Colorado.
It was. It was bad examples in that case because they portrayed themselves as law and order advocates, but the Grand Dragon at the time in the 1920s got in trouble for things like tax evasion. He got in trouble for attempted assault on someone, and these are leaders who were trying to, at the time, portray themselves as the law and order advocates in the state of Colorado.
Who would have thought? Grand Dragon of KKK, not a good dude. Baffling. All right. Thank you, Steve.